We're asking politicians on both sides the same question.
Are you stupid?
They're reeling from a series of blunders and problems from the president and his former national security advisor who took the fifth.
Like you see on The Mob, right? You see the mob takes the fifth.
To Florida's Democratic Party boss who had issues with issues.
Issues are just not something that I get really involved in.
To the mayor of Tampa who joked about shooting journalists, to the Montana Republican who attacked a journalist. We'll work through the fallout with former Democratic Congressman Patrick Murphy, Republican strategist Adam Goodman, and former UN Ambassador John Bolton. Plus,
You just took off. Get your light on her.
Florida voters thought they were giving permanently disabled first responders a tax break, but we discovered the catch in the law that can leave them behind.
They're putting a clause in there that will not allow for us to actually utilize it.
This is Money, Power, and Politics. Oh, the president's approval rating is going down as the investigation of Russia and his campaign is heating up. Meanwhile, the Senate is not sold on the health care plan the president endorsed. If passed, the CBO says 23 million people would lose coverage in the coming decade. So the president and Republicans are coming off of another rough week. But so are Florida Democrats.
I'm a white woman. I don't get it.
Meet Sally Boynton Brown from Idaho. Democrats picked her to lead the party in Florida after some controversial remarks on the national stage.
And I am from Idaho. We are so white. So white, right?
When she ran for DNC chair and lost, she said her party should not shut people down.
We cannot smash voices down when they are trying to scream.
But then she said her job is to shut down white people.
And my job is to shut other white people down when they want to interrupt.
Because she said white people need to be schooled.
So that I can go school the other white people.
Because white people are prejudiced.
My job is to shut other white people down when they want to say, oh no, I'm not prejudiced.
And after accusing her party of having a race problem she does not know how to correct.
And around the issue of race, we are so far out of alignment, I don't even know the way back.
She took over as the executive director of the Democratic Party of Florida. And after her controversial comments on the national stage, Democratic activists here in our state asked her for some thoughts on the issues.
First of all, I will say I'm not an issues person.
It did not go well.
Facebook issues are just not something that I get really involved in.
She said she knows it's not popular for a party leader to not get involved in issues.
This is not going to be popular, but this is my belief of the time and place that we're in now.
She actually said she wants to make the party more popular by doing something unpopular, like staying away from policies and issues.
I believe that we're in a place where it is very hard to get voters excited about issues. I believe that people are emotionally reacting to the emotion.
Emotionally reacting to emotion. That was her answer.
It's not my job to focus on the issues. It's your job as people who are looking at being Democrats to focus on the direction the party's going.
Taking the party in a direction without thinking about the issues. What could go wrong?
My job is to elect the Democrats who go do the governance and figure out the policies.
Get them elected by playing on voters' emotions, then figure out the policies and issues. That's literally what she said.
As Democrats, I think we continue to try to connect with voters' heads around issues and facts and truth when we are now in an era of emotional politics.
It sounds as if she's trying to emulate what she thinks got President Trump elected when Trump won by focusing on economic issues in states that Democrats typically win.
Issues are just not something that I get really involved in.
And after getting schooled on that, she apologized, said issues are in fact the backbone of our democracy and that she did not articulate her thoughts correctly. Ironically, Democrats have repeatedly lost in Florida because they did not focus on winning issues or they have not articulated their thoughts correctly. And their new leader still has an awful lot to learn because she's already written the attack ads for her opponents.
First of all, I will say I'm not an issues person. It's not my job to focus on the issues.
I'm a white woman. I don't get it.
Please welcome former Democratic Congressman Patrick Murphy. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
I'll start off with a softball. Okay, so if you hired a campaign manager from Idaho who already maybe did not know the state of Florida particularly well, who says that her job is to shut down white people and then said she's not involved in issues, would you keep her?
Well, that's of course going to be up to the chairman of the party, but those are concerning comments because the truth is, no matter what side of the aisle you sit, this job, public service, is all about issues, right? This is all about helping people out.
Let's play some woulda, coulda, shoulda from last year.
Okay.
Do you think you could have done anything differently to beat Marco Rubio that Democrats could take forward heading into next year, or was that just hopeless from the start?
We were all basing certain things on polling that was showing Secretary Clinton winning the election by 2, 3, maybe even 4 points here in Florida. We knew that we were going to stay pretty much in line with her. It was a question of how much did Secretary Clinton win by. We based certain assumptions on that. And because of that, ran certain ads and everything happened because of an assumption that our numbers were fundamentally wrong. So if I could do it again, I'd probably question those numbers a little bit more, dig a little bit deeper into the polls, maybe look at something beyond polling, because everybody in politics got this last election wrong. But beyond that, you look a little deeper. Back to the first question that you asked. Donald Trump had a message. Whether or not everyone agrees with it is a different story, but he had a message and he was really trying to drill down, and it resonated with a lot of people because people are frustrated right now. They're angry. They feel in many ways that the American dream is disappearing and that their job isn't going to be there in 5, 10 years from now. And they feel like they're playing by the rules, but other folks aren't, and they're getting away with it. So he was able to tap into that anger much better than Secretary Clinton. So, there's always things you look back, you wish you would have done different, but in many regards, our race was tied to the top of the ticket.
Patrick Murphy, I want to thank you for joining us. Yes. We started off with the controversy, the gaffe with Sally Boynton Brown. She is not the only one who blundered this past week, so we want to round out now the top 5. Number 4, Mayor Buckhorn pulls a Homer Simpson.
See you in hell, dinner plate.
Yeah, there's Tampa Mayor Bob Buckhorn in a special operations drill last year.
You can't ever really appreciate what they do every night.
He should have stopped there, but then he showed up at a special operations conference 1 year later and gushed about how he enjoyed pretending to shoot journalists with a machine gun. He said that in front of journalists. He said that in front of military journalists who have dodged bullets and lost colleagues in the line of fire. He told them the first place he points that gun is at the media, and that he's never seen grown men cry like little girls, that it's great payback. He loves it. Buckhorn later apologized. Number 3, President Trump needs a map.
We just got back from the Middle East. We just got back to Saudi Arabia.
Our commander-in-chief flew into Israel and told the Israelis he just got back from the Middle East, appearing to not know Israel is still in the Middle East.
We just got back from the Middle East.
Watch the Israeli ambassador appear to smile and take his hand to his face.
We just got back from the Middle East.
Makes you wonder, where was Trump's director of national intelligence in this? Why couldn't he help Trump find his way?
I just got a note saying I'm at the wrong hearing.
Never mind.
But I'll go try to find out where I'm supposed to be.
Okay. Number 2, Trump pulls a Gilligan. Trump pushed back on reports that he shared highly classified intel with Russia by saying he never told them the source of the intel was Israel.
Just so you understand, I never mentioned the word or the name Israel. Never mentioned it during that conversation.
The reporters who broke the story never said he did, but Trump may have just revealed the source himself by saying he never told them it was Israel.
I never mentioned the word or the name Israel.
Ow! Unwittingly and comically revealing too much information used to be Gilligan's trademark. And number 1 on this week's list of gaffes, Michael Flynn pleads the Fifth, making his former boss eat his words.
Fifth Amendment, Fifth Amendment, Fifth Amendment. Horrible.
The president's former national security advisor pleaded the Fifth so that his words cannot be used against him, leaving a lot of stuff the president said to be used against him.
When you have your staff taking the Fifth Amendment, taking the Fifth, so they're not prosecuted, I think it's disgraceful.
How disgraceful is it?
Like you see on the mob, right? You see the mob takes the Fifth. If you're innocent, why are you taking the Fifth Amendment?
Which brings us to Flynn seeking immunity. We'll close with Flynn eating his own words on that.
When you are given immunity, that means that you've probably committed a crime.
Time now for Republican and big-time Trump supporter Adam Goodman to join us. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Yes or no, does the mob take the Fifth? Trump said they do.
Very good question. I think that's one for the books. I went back to try to research that answer. I don't have that answer yet. I'll get back to you.
The president had the answer. He said yes. He said yes, the mob takes the fifth. But he said that in the campaign. A lot of what the president said in the campaign is coming back to bite him now, is it not?
Well, you know, the campaign usually is a precursor of things to come. It seems that more and more this campaign we continue to go back to the campaign as opposed to forward to the kinds of things the campaign was meant to promote. And I think that's where the president needs to be focused.
Latest Fox polling shows the president's numbers are down. 7 in 10 want or support that special investigation. Advise President Trump from here. What should his next move be?
Well, number one, he's overseas. That was a good move. I think it's a good time for him to be overseas. He appointed his own legal team to address the issues at hand that you're suggesting. That's important. But I've had an idea for a while about what the president should do and do now. I think he should leave Washington, D.C. and go out to America. He should go to where he feels the best, where I think he could literally rally the American people behind the things that he was promising and campaigning on, and then challenge Washington to get something done.
He has but one problem with that, in that it appears a majority of the people aren't with him.
Polls change all the time, Craig. I mean, right now, you know, he's in the mid-30s. If he does something spectacularly important and timely, those will double in a matter of a week or two. And I think the idea the Russians are coming will take another spin somewhere half a world away.
Adam Goodman, thank you as always.
Thank you.
Coming up, John Bolton was on the president's shortlist for Secretary of State, so we'll go one-on-one with him and ask him what he thinks the administration should change. And we'll show you how the legislature may have just burned disabled first responders. Well, voters approved Amendment 3 to give disabled first responders a property tax break. But there is always a catch, as you'll see in tonight's We the People.
You just took off. Get your light on her.
For the men and women who dedicate their lives to fighting crime.
Do whatever you gotta do to get out, bro.
And saving lives from flaming cars and burning homes, Florida took notice.
I have an ambulance on the way.
Last year, voters overwhelmingly passed Amendment 3 to give a property tax break to first responders who are permanently disabled in the line of duty. But some, like disabled former medic April Bullock, discovered a catch.
I felt completely dishonored.
8 years ago, she was treating a patient in an ambulance when it crashed.
I know we hit something, and I felt a pop.
She said that pop was her head when it slammed into a cabinet, and her medical records show it damaged her brain.
I could be going somewhere and forget where I'm going.
She has trouble with numbers and trouble reading.
Or be in the house and not realize what I'm doing.
She gets easily confused, and her short-term memory just does not work right.
It's like it falls off. I don't know how to explain it other than that.
What do you remember about meeting us a few minutes ago?
Again, her doctors have said she cannot hold down a job, and she knows she needs help.
I don't remember your name. I'm sorry.
She gets around $800 a month in Social Security disability, and her Citrus County home and nearly 24 prescriptions chew up much of that.
It's devastating.
So those are farm fresh.
So she lives off the eggs from a few chickens she keeps outside, because she says she can't afford much else.
A lot of places throw out perfectly good food.
So you go into dumpsters to find food?
Sometimes.
She went from saving lives to scrounging for food and thought Amendment 3 would help her dig out. But as it turns out, lawmakers came up with a plan to make it harder to get that tax break than the amendment may suggest.
They're putting a clause in there that will not allow for us to actually utilize it. So it looks like the bill is passing, but it's not.
She has records tying her injury to the accident and notes from different doctors noting her disability.
So this is stating that that I met the rules to be eligible.
But under the lawmaker's plan, she also needs a note from her former employer connecting her disability to her former job, which any company concerned about getting sued may not want to write.
So an employer is going to be apprehensive to write that for an employee. Do you understand what I'm saying?
So April Bullock may be the first of many disabled first responders who voters may have intended to honor and help, but still get left behind.
It's as though you've been thrown away.
Oh, the legislature passed these new rules near the end of session this year. Meanwhile, Washington lawmakers are refocused, of course, on the war on terror. After the Manchester attack, President Trump said he will step up the war on ISIS, which now brings us to our first big question for our next guest, who made the president's short list for Secretary of State. We're joined now by former UN Ambassador John Bolton. Mr. Bolton, thank you for joining us.
Glad to be with you.
Let's start with ISIS. What more should we do to destroy ISIS that we are not currently doing?
Well, I think we've got to change the approach to try and accomplish the destruction of the ISIS caliphate in Syria and Iraq as quickly as we can. So I think the pace and the scope of our operations have to increase, and the sooner we do that, the better.
What specific step should the Trump administration take to ramp up and escalate the fight?
Well, I think getting more of the Arab states involved would be important. I think it's also important to consider what happens after ISIS is defeated. We want to do this in a way that minimizes the upside for Iran and its surrogates in the region, like the Assad regime, like Hezbollah, like the Baghdad government. So it really requires a lot more effort in a more concentrated way. We're told the Pentagon is coming up with options for the president to do this, and I just think the sooner the better. It's not cost-free to allow ISIS to continue to operate in this space it controls in Syria and Iraq.
At the same time, we have different terrorist groups fueled by the state sponsor of Iran. We have the arms deal to the Saudis, but that's not going to counter the threat posed by Iran. It doesn't deal in conventional warfare.
Well, it doesn't counter two threats from Iran. One, the terrorist threat, which you mentioned. Many people don't realize that since the Ayatollahs took power in 1979, Iran has been the central banker of international terrorism, the biggest state sponsor in terms of financing and arms. That threat is real in the Persian Gulf region, as well as in Hamas and Hezbollah threatening Israel and threatening the United States. And the other threat, of course, is the Iran nuclear program, which continues despite the nuclear deal that was agreed to back in 2015, Iran's ballistic missile efforts, its possible cooperation with North Korea, and its work on nuclear issues continue.
And to that end, what specifically should the president do to crack down on Iranian aggression?
Well, I think he needs to abrogate the Iranian nuclear deal. It was a strategic disaster for the United States when we entered into it. It's not getting any better with age. And until Iran recognizes that we've got an administration that is determined to do, as the president himself said today, to ensure Iran doesn't get nuclear weapons, you need to translate that rhetoric into real action.
Ambassador Bolton, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Coming up, why did House Republicans pass their health plan without the CBO score in place? We will ask Congressman Gus Bilirakis. Well, the House Republican health care plan would help bring down the deficit, but the Congressional Budget Office projects 23 million people will eventually lose coverage if passed. So, Evan Axelbank asked Congressman Gus Bilirakis why he voted for the plan before these projections came out.
So how do you rectify all that with the vote you cast?
Well, there was a CBO score initially for the bill, but I will tell you this, we've got to move the ball forward.
Have you received assurances from Governor Scott that he would not opt out of it?
I haven't discussed it with Governor Scott.
Should you have done that before?
No. I'm gonna talk to Governor Scott.
If somebody does lose health insurance in your district because of the vote you've cast, would you take personal responsibility for that?
The people at the end, they're going to be a vast majority of the people will be covered.
Would you take personal responsibility if someone in your district lost coverage? Would you take responsibility?
People are losing coverage now, so we're going to try to cover as many people as possible under this new piece of legislation.
President Trump, when he was campaigning, the promise was very clear. He campaigned on, we will have outstanding coverage at a fraction of the cost we're paying now. Is there any independent study you have seen that will make that come true?
I will tell you, we're going to get.
Is there any independent study you've seen?
I will tell you, we will get the best bill possible, when it will pass the Senate, and I believe that we're going to make improvements in the Senate and conference.
He said outstanding coverage for a small fraction of the cost.
It will be.
What I'm asking you is
it
that
will
a
be, in
responsible
my opinion, it will be outstanding coverage.
Now, coming up, Memorial Day in context, how it all started and why it changed. Confederate General Robert E. Lee came home from the Civil War to a big surprise because the U.S. Army buried its fallen soldiers in Lee's front yard, turning General Lee's estate into Arlington National Cemetery. Then in 1868, our government decorated the graves with flags in a ceremony that kicked off Decoration Day, which honored fallen Civil War soldiers. Then over the years, it morphed into remembering the fallen Americans from all wars, and then really took off after World War II. Then it was renamed Memorial Day in 1967, and then in 1968 changed to the last Monday in May. And now here in Tampa Bay, we honor Memorial Day with one of the largest ceremonies in the nation at Bay Pines. Folks, that's our show. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next week.